Hey there, my wedding planning friends, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for clicking on my video. I'm Emily Summer. I'm a wedding planner based in Montana, and I make weekly videos on wedding planning tips and advice. Today's video, we're talking about something a little bit non-traditional. Rather than tips for a wedding in the more traditional sense, today we're going to talk all about a courthouse wedding. We're seeing more and more couples choose to have more intimate ceremonies, whether this is in adventure elopement style or just going down to City Hall and having a City Hall courthouse style wedding. So I wanted to provide a video that gave a little bit of some information on how to achieve that if you are somebody that is not wanting to do the whole extravagant full day wedding and wedding reception. Obviously, this video is not going to be for everyone, but I do know there is a market out there for couples that are just wanting to have a little bit more laid back, local style wedding ceremony. So when it comes to getting married at the courthouse, there is a checklist of items you want to make sure that you are doing before the actual wedding day, as well as on your wedding day itself at your City Hall. So number one is to, of course, choose your location. So if you're doing a courthouse wedding, this is obviously going to be at a City Hall. However, this does not have to be at the City Hall where you currently live. So if that's not a very visually aesthetic place, if it doesn't really have any strong meaning for you, you can choose to get married right where you live, or you can also choose a City Hall somewhere else and it's going to be just as legal as where you currently live. So maybe this is in the location where you guys first met, or maybe a trip you took together where you got engaged. Maybe it's a place that has a really beautiful interior for those photos. Whatever the reasoning, choose the place that you would like to get married at and then move forward on the checklist. Number two is to research the marriage license requirements wherever you plan to have your wedding ceremony. I have a whole video all about marriage licenses, so I'm not going to get into too much detail in this one. So if you are curious and a little bit clueless maybe about obtaining a marriage license, what that process even requires, what that means, check out the video above for all of that information. Essentially, the requirements are going to vary depending on your location. So different cities, different counties have different requirements for obtaining a marriage license. So this is why you want to do your research ahead of time so that you know what to expect as far as legal documents you need to provide, how much it's going to cost, and those sorts of things. Number three is to actually apply for your marriage license. So even though you technically are getting your marriage license from the courthouse, you will likely need to do this and obtain it prior to the date that you plan to go in and get married. Those are going to be two separate occasions, most likely. So like I mentioned before, the requirements can vary depending on where you live, but to apply for your marriage license, you will most likely need one or all of the following information. So typically a state issued ID or driver's license, copies of your birth certificate, both partners, any divorce paperwork if you have been previously married, or death certificates if you have been previously married, as well as your social security numbers. You'll also want to make sure that you know what form of payment is required. Some courthouses only accept checks or cash as a form of payment, and some will accept cards or any form of payment. So make sure you're knowing not only what the cost is going to be ahead of time, but also the form of payment that's accepted, so you can make sure that you bring that with you as well. Another little tip too, make sure that you are signing your marriage license with a black pen, or else it will not be accepted. Number four, make an appointment or nominate a day to go in and have your wedding. If you're able to make an appointment, this is definitely the route that I would recommend going, as you know that you're going to be able to go in on that day, you have it all set. But this isn't always an option. Some courthouses don't offer appointments, or some won't offer, they only offer appointments during certain days, and maybe that won't work with your schedule. So just do a little bit of research and see if that's even an option for you. And like I said, if it is, highly recommend making an appointment. Otherwise, you would just nominate a day, so choose a day that you plan to go in, and you will just have to go in and wait your turn to go in and have your actual wedding ceremony with the officiant provided. Typically, these appointments aren't offered on weekends. Usually it's just a Monday through Friday service as well, so keep that in mind if you are thinking about a date or wanting to have a Saturday date if anyone else is joining you or for any other reason. Typically Monday through Friday is when you will find appointments or these services offered at your courthouse. Number five, decide if you are wanting to recite your own vows, or if that's even an option for you, and then prepare those. So depending on the amount of time that you have at the courthouse, again, varies based on where you plan on doing this. You may or may not have the option to recite your own vows. So if you have a very limited amount of time, you will likely just go through what the legal process is that they do there. If you do have a little bit more time, then you might be able to have your own personal vows that you are going to recite to each other during your wedding ceremony. Number 6, hire a photographer and or videographer. So even though this isn't a big traditional wedding, it's still a very special and momentous moment in your life, and it should be documented in some form. So whether that's hiring a photographer to document the actual wedding ceremony process at the courthouse, or maybe you're just hiring someone to take some photos with you inside or around the courthouse afterwards to document the day. Whatever your preferences are, I highly recommend having somebody to capture this moment, whether it's on video, on photo, or both. Number 7, invite anyone that you would like to join you if this is something that you plan to do. Huge benefit of having a courthouse wedding is getting away with not having to invite anyone. Typically you will need at least one witness though for your ceremony, so if you don't really want to invite any family or friends, your photographer, if you're having one, can serve as this witness, but make sure you're looking that up ahead of time to know what is required as far as witnesses go where you plan to get married. There will also likely be a guest number cap based on where you're getting married to, so maybe they only allow you to bring 2 guests as your 2 witnesses and that's it. Some may allow up to 5 or 6, so if you want to have siblings or parents or anyone close with you to serve as witnesses during your wedding ceremony, then you just want to make sure that you are looking this up ahead of time before you are inviting any additional guests. Number 8, dress up. Like I said, even though this is not your traditional big extravagant wedding, it's still a very special day. And if you would like to, this is a great opportunity to still dress up and be able to kind of mark this day as something special, especially if you are taking photos either during or after, and wear something that you might feel somewhat bridal in without having to purchase a full-on wedding dress. And finally, personalize your day. So getting married at the courthouse doesn't lend way to a ton of personal touches. So if this is important to you, find a way to bring in any amount of tradition or personal touches that you would like to really document this day as your own. So maybe that's still having a bridal bouquet that you were going to carry during your wedding ceremony and take photos with. Maybe you guys still want to have a first look prior to actually doing the wedding ceremony at the courthouse. Or maybe you want to get a small little wedding cake to share after your wedding to kind of bring in that small little tradition but still have it just be the 2 of you. Or perhaps this is planning a special dinner or some small after party following your courthouse nuptials so that you can celebrate with those that are close to you. Having a wedding doesn't have to be a huge blown out affair, doesn't have to require thousands and thousands of dollars. If you're just wanting to get married, have the legal side of it, and have a small intimate ceremony or celebration, a courthouse wedding might be a great option for you. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe to get weekly videos on wedding planning tips and advice, and we'll see you next week.